Hello guys, my name is Devlog, and welcome back. I haven't seen you guys for a while. Aside from ghosting all of my parasocial relationships, getting into drawing, which you've seen some of the results of already, and starting school again, I've been keeping up on Eclipse 6 development. Now, there's some mixed news about this, but I think you guys are gonna like it. There comes a time in every developer's life when they have to admit that their codebase is horrible, and that they might need to either refactor everything or start over from scratch. That's happened before to me, and starting over was the best thing I ever did. It allowed me to make my game look better, feel better, be easier to develop, and run faster. Looking back at the very first version of Eclipse compared to the one that exists now, the difference is very clear, and I honestly think that the original is a piece of malware by my current standards. I stuck absolutely everything in the main file, which, if you know anything about programming or game development, you'll know is a very, very bad choice. It was essentially the equivalent of jamming everything in a house into one single room. All of the data for all of the items was just manually entered into the code in a big long list that looks like this, and the game crashed frequently. The next version of Eclipse, the one this video is mostly about, is so much better. Not everything is jammed into the main file. Items and recipes and blocks and stuff are stored in JSON files that you can alter yourself if you wanted to, and not everything has its own separate image. However, not everything is sunshine and rainbows and pixies and unicorns and ice cream and stuff. This version of Eclipse also had some kinks and some honestly baffling design decisions that unfortunately I couldn't completely iron out. For instance, while it is true that not everything was jammed into the main file, I had jammed most things into a separate file called constants, which caused similar structural issues. These issues continued to get worse until I had to untangle several file-long dependency loops, which sucked a lot and was no fun at all. All of the UI, user interfaces in the game, were hard-coded in, which meant that every time I wanted something to have its own custom UI, I would have to program everything in from scratch. This was absolute cancer because I was hoping and planning that I'd be able to add in multitudinous different crafting stations/machines that would have different UIs and ways of functioning. Having to manually program 1 or 2 extra windows would have been fine, but manually programming in 5 would actually make me consider ending it all. On top of this, there were a number of other issues, such as the fact that while I had wanted fully customizable modding to be a feature, I'd structured the game in such a way that it couldn't be. Eventually, it just got to be too much, and I decided to restart all over again. It took 2 devlogs, dude. Of course, I did get a couple good months of development in before completely restarting again, so I do have a number of new features I'd like to slowly exposit to you, but just to get you invested and hopefully subscribed, let me list off a couple of the new features in my new and improved, again, version of Eclipse. Numero uno, and the smallest on this list, is simply GPUized smooth lighting to keep everything looking nice and snazzy. I figured out how to use shaders in SFML, so it's pretty nice. Numero dos, online multiplayer. Now, this currently makes Windows think that the game is a virus, which I'm gonna have to find a fix for, but I think this is absolutely massive, and I'm hoping to see some videos on multiplayer playthroughs in the future. Number 3, a fully customizable GUI system with resizable windows and reactive UI components. And finally, number 4, fully customizable and network easy Lua modding. Let me expand on that in more depth because I'm super proud of this. The new version of Eclipse uses a library called Soul to integrate Lua mods into the game's code during runtime, which is every time you boot up the game. What this means in practice is that if you create a properly formatted mod folder or download one online and just put it into the mods folder in the game, it'll load the mod when you start up the game. I'm developing all the main game's content as a mod, which means that not only will you be able to reproduce and probably surpass anything that's in the base game, you could probably remove all of my stuff and replace it with your own custom content entirely. The mod system still needs some work. For example, mods currently can't be dependent on other mods, and they can only reference files in their own folder, which means if you want to add in your own pickaxes, you'll have to copy the base game's pickaxe.lua file. But still, it's working as expected. I'm also making sure that modders don't have to deal with networking. For instance, here's the pickaxe code in Lua. There's nothing network related at all. It's all handled entirely in this single line. I still don't know what happens when 2 people try to play together with different mods loaded, but when they have the same mods loaded, everything works fine. Now that I've gotten the new superior Eclipse showcased, it's time to move on to the greatly improved and currently playable Eclipse. So even though I have restarted Eclipse again, I still did get a lot of dev work done on the current version. You've probably already noticed that I have indeed added block textures, even though I said that I wouldn't. It turns out that spriting a block's textures isn't so bad when you don't draw 3 separate variations of the block, while also drawing variations for every set of neighboring blocks possible. When you only draw 1 variation, and you only allow it to connect to blocks horizontally and vertically, you get a much smaller sprite sheet. On top of this, there's also a tool specifically designed to generate these sprite sheets. I've tried to implement textures 2 times before this though, once with a per block per frame approach, which needless needless to say, did not perform well, and once with a similar chunked approach to the one I'm currently using, except every single chunk would have its own image generated when you load a world, crashing the entire game while it tried to generate an effectively 1260 megapixel image. The current working approach is also using chunks, but it only generates the images for chunks that are on screen. Lighting is still per block per frame though. There's also particle effects, which are new and help to spice up a bunch of different weapons and projectiles. While I'm talking about engine features and not new content, I also added sound effects, music, and slash commands. The music in the game is pretty bare bones, and it'll stay like that for the rest of time. There's one short track meant to play only in the plains biome, but I never made any of the other biomes track, so it just plays everywhere. There's also a boss track for the corrupted automaton, and the boss added in this update. I posted those two boss tracks, as well as one unused one, to my channel, by the way, if you want to listen to them before fighting the bosses. They're not great, but they're a definite upgrade to the one in the first Eclipsic. There's also slash commands now, which I'll put a full list in the description if I remember to, but they're very useful for testing, messing around, and as of the time of writing this, the only way to get the next boss is summoned. Oh, and you can name your worlds. Now, onto the actual game's content, the meat and potatoes of this video. There's a bunch here that took me about a month of straight dev time, and might take you an hour or two to fully discover. If you want to go play the game without spoiling yourself, you can download the game in the description. First off is the addition of spears, which in Terraria are of course melee weapons. I however made the very original and very strange decision to make them summoner weapons. I haven't really been good at making summoner a fun class to play, and to be honest I probably won't ever be able to, but the addition of a whip-like weapon to increase summoner DPS a little bit goes a long way towards making it playable. Potions are another addition to the player's kit, all of which can be crafted using various plants that can be found around the world. There's also a bunch more items for each class, as well as new armor, but in the interest of not ruining the pacing of this video, I'm not going to list them all off. There are a few notable ones, such as the Staff of the Elements, which shoots a variety of elements, and the Corrupt Slicer, which gains damage the more souls it collects. There's also a single notable piece of armor, the Summoner class helmet, which acts as a homing turret, shooting bullets at anything near you. Last, but definitely not least, is the Sand Shark. This is the boss added in this update, and it's pretty cool, I guess. Again, if you want to fight it without spoilers, the game is down in the description. As you might have guessed, the Sand Shark can only be fought in the desert, and I'd recommend fighting it in the brand new pyramid structure. A previous version of this video had me explaining exactly how I wrote the code generating the pyramid, but all you need to know is that it's really cool. It has 3 attacks, and I'm not going to explain them all here, but my personal favorite is the one where it dashes from one side of the screen to the other, leaving behind a trail of sand. I'd recommend fighting it with a full kit of potions and gear, particularly weapons with range. There's also underground houses you can get some extra accessories from for a little bit of a stat boost. That'll be all for today. Thank you so much for stopping by and maybe subscribing. If you know someone who isn't subscribed or someone who knows Lua, let them know that I exist and I'm coming for them. Remember to wash yourself. My name is and was console.log, and goodbye.